So, good morning. As Janet mentioned, this is from the New Testament, Paul's letter to the Colossians. And it's, let's see, chapter 3, verses 12 through 17. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you. So you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in the one body, and be thankful. Let the word of the Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom, and with gratitude in your hearts, sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to God. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, just giving thanks to God, the Father, through him.
Well, it's good to be with you all. And what a surprise. So let's see what God is doing this morning in this service of worship. Listen for what the Spirit is saying in this reading from the Gospel of Luke. You change preachers, you change scriptures. Sorry about that. This is the lectionary for the day. It is Luke 2:41 through 52, and it is the only story of Jesus as a child. I often wonder if they threw it in there because you got to have something about Jesus when he was a kid. And whether it's thrown in or not, it has an interesting point to make. So you see what you think. Now, every year, his parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up as usual for the festival. When the festival was ended and they started to return, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. But his parents didn't know it. Okay, figure that. Anyway, assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a day's journey. Okay. All you overprotective mothers, think of that one. Then they started to look for him among their relatives and friends. When they didn't find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished, and his mother said to him, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look at your father. Your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." He said to them, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know I must be in my Father's house?" Smart aleck. But they didn't understand what he said to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them. His mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in years and in divine and human favor. May God add blessing to this reading of the Word. Okay, you guys, so you just have to indulge me today because this is one of my favorite days to preach. when Janet called last night, I said, "Oh, how fun! I get to do my thing." So the reason I love this Sunday is because we just celebrated Christmas and the gift of Emmanuel, God with us. The light came into the darkness, and the darkness, remember this, the darkness will not overcome it. And from that place, that sacred place, we moved to the secular New Year. So it's just this wonderful transition of the gift of light to take into the new year. So when we look back over 2024, and I brought the newspaper this morning because this is what everybody's doing, right? At the end of the year, we're all looking back at the big stories of 2024 in all areas. And you can have a field day with this. But anyway, when we look back, the obvious things that jump out at us are the presidential election, right? Though 64 countries around the world elected heads of state this year, not one incumbent won, just for the record. We had 2 searing wars going on that are messing with the world order. Not to mention the global warming events. Okay, what others do you have? What are some of your big ones? Willie Mays died. In my house, that was big. What?
Oakland A's left. A's left Oakland. Baseball.
Oh, yes, the A's left Oakland. Come on.
Trying to forget the whole thing, actually.
No, this is the whole idea of the sermon. But anyway, we had all kinds of hurricanes, right? Floods. I mean, you name it. Billions of dollars. I mean, we just had another one in Santa Cruz, right? Yeah. So those get our attention, and we all see those. But underneath the headlines, some of the stuff that we don't see is sort of interesting, you all. So, if wisdom is to be revealed to us, we must ponder what has happened this year in order to move into next year with any sort of sense of direction. Now, no wonder the first month of the year was named for the Roman god Janus, who was depicted with 2 heads, one looking forward and one looking back. At this time of year, as I said, there are lots of people talking about the great things that happened this year, the most important events, and they argue ad nauseum about it. But below that, we find all sorts of discoveries that are wondrous and in which we see God's hand at work. Take one of the smallest creatures, the fruit fly. You know how big those are? They're so annoying, but little tiny things. Well, they took the fruit fly's brain and dissected it, encased it in clay, and then cut it in tiny, tiny slivers, thinner than your hair. It took 10 years to complete this thing that's about the size of a poppy seed. And they think it will give us clues and understanding of how our human minds process thoughts, make decisions, and store memories. Isn't that amazing? The creativity of God. Contrast that tiny critter and that discovery to go 137 light years away from us, where NASA found a super Earth, TOI-715-B, for those in the know, and it may be habitable. It is 1.5 times the size of Earth. And it has all the right things. It's far enough away from its sun, and it could have water, which will give life a chance to grow. This is hopeful. And we see connection in that smallest thing, and that thing so far away. And we see God's hand in all of it. And in a completely different area, in art, the earliest known South American cave art was found hidden away in Patagonia with almost 900 different cave paintings, from faces to geometric shapes to llama-like creatures. There are indications that over 100, I count them, 100 generations may have used this cave for painting, which will teach us all about history. And God is in it all. Remembering all this creativity abroad when we didn't even know it was happening, we look to 2025, fast approaching. Many of us are discouraged by the divisiveness that besets us, by the lack of trust that threatens our sense of community, by the loss of truth in our social discourse. This backdrop seems to proclaim the coming year to be incredibly challenging. How will we navigate these waters? How will we define meaning in our lives when chaos threatens to be the order of the day? But it's just in times of challenge and darkness that the light shines brightest. It is in times such as these that we seek that which is strong enough to uphold us, something creative enough to help us find solutions, something enduring enough that it can be relied upon, something loving enough to triumph over all that is unloving and hurtful that surrounds us, something large enough to encompass the great variety of humankind. All of us gathered here, I think, would come up with God as the thing that is powerful enough or creative enough or enduring enough or great enough to bring wholeness out of fracture. In God we trust. So, after we've taken stock of the past year, we look ahead to how to make the new year better. What do we want to change in our lives to bring more meaning, to live into greater wholeness for the largest number of people? Now, many of us make resolutions. 80%, they say, lose them by the second month. But go ahead, make your resolutions, and You can check yourself during the year if you like. But I think one of the best guidelines for resolutions or thinking about the new year and how we want to live it comes from Joe's reading, Colossians. In it, it says, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved. Do you feel like you're holy? You are. We are all both human and divine. And when Jesus was in the temple with his heavenly Father, his father, earthly father, was going nuts looking for him. And that says to us that both are important. We need to nurture both our human qualities and our divine qualities. But now, Colossians says, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, I got stuck there. Clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Can you see that on a billboard? Can you imagine a world, the world we might create, if we relied not on might makes right, or our own self-interest, or putting others down to make ourselves up, but on these characteristics of compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience? Because they encourage a deep and heartfelt empathy for others and an active interest in others' welfare. It suggests taking others as seriously as we take ourselves and having patience with our own shortcomings and one another's. Notice that the metaphor is all about clothing until we get to peace. And then Paul suggests that the peace of Christ rule our hearts, so that the word of Christ may dwell in us richly. So as the heart pumps blood out to all your extremities, and therefore bring life to every area of your body, when the peace of Christ fills our being, the fruitfulness of Christ's word can be seen in our lives. Seek Christ's peace. Open to God's living presence. Jesus, as a boy, came to the temple to worship, to seek to learn and to question. And so we come, not because we must or ought to, but because it will enrich our lives, give meaning to our existence, give us strength for the living of our days. This doesn't mean our lives will be all smooth sailing. In this singular story in Luke, seeing Jesus as a child, we see that it is in our very ordinary lives, in the messiness of everyday living and family squabbles, that we find God standing by our side and know that God is in this with us, drawing us into the new life that awaits us, calling us to grow in both our humanity and our divinity. May we embrace this journey into the new year, trusting that God is leading us all towards wholeness. May it be so.